Day 3, Wright's Lake to Florence Lake, 15 kilometers, 8 hours. The next day we awoke before the sun in an attempt to catch up to our ideal trip itinerary. We absolutely sent it over 15 kilometers of undulating terrain. The first lake we encountered had the narrowness of a fjord, but once again, no name. Once the north shore of Huron came into view atop the hills, we started looking for the pathway down to the valley floor. Little did we know that the descent would be a formidable boulder fall reminiscent of the crack in Killarney. After a few minutes of down climbing, we continued to descend through the forest all the way to Wright's Lake. The way the roots and rocks wove together on the path reminded me of how we all have our place in the giant tapestry of the everyday. How we need each other to get from here to there, from then till now, and how everything is more beautiful when we work together. Today we would reach our second highest elevation of the trip, 380 meters. We ascended steeply out of Wright's Lake in the morning, stayed up in the clouds for about 7 kilometers, and descended sharply to Wright's Lake. The delicious forest path continued for a good hour, ambling between higher passes. But it eventually called us upward to more challenging rocky scrambles with spectacular views of both the range of bell-like mountains and more bodies of water. We would climb and then lose a further 300 meters of elevation on the trail between Wright's and Florence Lake, leaving our highest climb for the very next morning. Down, up, again through the forest and onto the maze of rocks, past veritable fields of blueberry bushes past their prime.
Makes me happy. I think there's more to life than this hellhole.
Finally, from above, we could see Alexander Lake. We were not home yet, though, because this is a very long lake, and we got to walk its full expanse. The long descent at the west end of Alexander reminded us of the wooded Moose Pass climb in Killarney, and we were glad we wouldn't be going up it until later in the week. At the bottom of the hill, we continued northeast over a river, past a small waterfall, and caught a glimpse of the original carved sign for Kitchitwaa Shkwaandem. We saw a campsite by the lake, but chose to continue up the hill to the Florence Lake lean-to. The shelter was fairly new and well kept, other than the clutter of a sleeping bag, a can of beans, and some tarps. We spent the night with our tent pitched inside the lean-to because it was supposed to rain, Fully drained of energy, we retired to our tent at 8 p.m. and fell into a deep sleep. Day 4, Florence Lake to the eastern terminus and back to Horseshoe Lake. 8.6 kilometers, 8 hours. From Florence Lake, it took us about half an hour to climb 185 meters over 1 kilometer and summit Mount Ararat. Unfortunately, we couldn't see much of the famous view through all the fog, but we knew we'd be back soon. From the trail's highest point, there was more down, down, down through the forest. The skeletons of ferns and tree roots littered our path. Past the oh-so-charming Horseshoe Lake. After Horseshoe Lake, it becomes more challenging to stay on the right trail since so many side trails merge with it. There were further miles of natural highway to pass through. Razor-sharp shards of rock neatly stacked like charcuterie somehow transitioned into humps of stone as smooth as the backs of whales, and then back again and again.
Explore these lands, I love that.
Unlike the old wooden bridge leading over Tumbling Waterfall beginning, offered by the western terminus, the very eastern end of the trail has a stick with 2 orange ribbons tied around it, stuck into a pile of rocks, along with a yellow fence to block cars from parking there. It literally lands you steps from a hill on the highway so steep that trucks chug up it at 10 kilometers per hour with their blinkers on. There is rather anticlimactic signage, and when you turn around, there it is again. The yo-yo, eagerly waiting to retract and draw you back into itself, over the same mountains, through the same lakes and rivers and streams, past the same flora and fauna, but all backwards this time. Whereas the western terminus eases you in with a nice gentle walk through the forest, the eastern end starts off strong with a rocky clamor and stunning vistas. The wind kicked up and the sky turned a furious gray. It wasn't very welcoming, but we did it anyway, and Michael tells me it was one of his favorite parts. Horseshoe Lake is small, surrounded by lower white cliffs, and has an island I'd very much like to visit. We were confused by the conflicting signage that said that we were both allowed to and not allowed to camp on this part of the trail, but we needed to stop, so we very gently and respectfully set up camp and enjoyed some hot apple cider beneath our tarp as the rain fell that night. The sun set, the rain stopped, and the lake settled, just in time to lull us to sleep with its tranquility.
Got the spooks.